I always thought that I would end my career as a cabinet member in the president's office, and that the cabinet position doesn't exist, and it was Secretary of Culture. There was actually like a Secretary of Culture that managed and coordinated with the NEA and the NIH and the National Endowment for Humanities, as well as sort of worked cross-culturally across the globe with other countries around arts and heritage and humanities.
Hi, I'm Dave Weich, and you're listening to Work Shaped Life. When young people are given access to creativity, they can change their world. That was Dan Weiden's thinking when he and his family established Caldera. Every day, you can create who you want to be. Caldera, a nonprofit based in Portland, programs year-round in-school classes and weekend intensives, and an overnight summer camp where kids gather on 120 acres near Sisters in Central Oregon. Since 1996, more than 15,000 middle school and high school students have participated. Kimberly Howard-Wade is Caldera's executive director.
I've been at Caldera 4 years, going on 5, so I'm in the beginning of my 5th year.
I met you 15 years ago. You were the trust manager at the Oregon Cultural Trust. You did that job for a while. What, is it 5 years or more?
It was 5, yes.
At the time, I knew you as this person who had been an actress before that. So let's just rewind. What do you think of as your first professional job?
Oh, wow.
As in, like, the arc of a career maybe was getting started.
That was, well, there's two things. There's like a start and then a stop, and then a start again. So my first job out of school, out of undergrad, was as a production manager, project manager, let's call it project manager, for an advertising merchandising company. So companies that basically put logos on things. I was working, it was called Red Sail Advertising, and it was in San Francisco. And our biggest client was the Hyatt. And so I was constantly putting the Hyatt logo on like pins and hats and like notebooks.
You did that post-college?
Post-college, right out of college.
Fresh out of getting a political economic history degree.
Exactly. There's no tie. I studied political economic history to make my parents happy. My dad was at that time had an MBA, a Master of Business Administration in Management. My mother had a law degree and was open. Her law firm was growing in family law, had been a lovely history teacher before that. And so I had like business and history, and they both wanted to see me have a job that was going to pay the bills. And so when I was in college, I thought, well, what can I study that's going to show them that I have that intent? Meanwhile, I was running a theater company in my college. I started a little theater company. We created a business model and everything. We called it Dramatic Art Society, and we produced 3 shows a year. All we had was a faculty sponsor.
Okay. So at the time, I guess you just did you not see a career path, a viable career path, certainly one that would make your parents happy, but maybe one that wouldn't even support you in theater at the time?
Oh, not at all. Like I've always been this sort of bifurcated brain or binary, like I've been very left brain and analytical about survival and very right brain and creative about solutions. And so I couldn't think of my way of surviving in the theater at that time. So my solution was, if I go to graduate school, I'll get a Master of Fine Arts. So if I can't get work, I can always teach. And that was my logic. And so I went and got my grad degree. And then my first professional job after that was as a college professor. I maybe like manifested that on accident. That's when it went back to something that is very central to who I am today and probably was growing even before that, which was really wanting to give these young people that I was teaching um, their own creative voice. And so I worked really hard to make sure that these young people that I was in charge of at this time, even if they were going to go off and become a doctor or an engineer or a social worker, that they were learning something from theater that was going to go with them in terms of the human experience.
What did you learn from theater that went with you?
The thing that's biggest to me that keeps resonating today is that it's not about me. That theater acting is not about mask, it's about revelation. So for me to be the best possible performer, I need to get out of my own way. So take my ego and put it over there, literally off stage in the green room in a box, so that when I walk on stage, the voice of the playwright, the voice of the character, and what the character needs in relationship to the other people on stage is what the audience sees and hears and comes to understand. And I just recently, in thinking about Caldera, had to make a similar decision where I'm like, this is not about me. It's not about my vision and what I want for my own personal career. It's about what's right for this organization. If this organization is to continue on for the next 30 years, making the impact that we're making with middle school to high school youth in this 7-year cohort model. And so I said, okay, take my ego, put it off stage in a box, and let the legacy and the purpose of this organization speak to me about what the decision is that we need to make right now.
No.
I hope that's not too woo-woo. You can edit that.
No. No, that's great. I mean, one way that I often think about work that I think does apply to you very directly is that there is the oft-told Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours. He wrote about that. It was someone else's study, but he talked about Michael Jordan putting 10,000 hours in to become expert. How I always sort of interpreted and synthesized that was that, sure, if you're going to be a professional basketball player, you need to focus on a task that deeply. Most of us, however, do not have careers that are so deep and narrow. So the idea of doing 10,000 hours at any one thing is probably not that relevant to a typical person. And so the question that I always ask, and what I tend to sort of share with people who are asking for advice of one kind, is what are your 10,000 hours? Because that's what makes you. And that is how you bring value to any given organization or task at hand. And so you decided at a certain point to pursue something on more the management side. How did you wind up at the Oregon Cultural Trust as the trust manager after being an actress?
It really comes down to a question that I think the 10,000 hours for me is how can I make a contribution? Like, how can I do something for the world? What is what's my contribution? What is my service? What am I giving back? And I'm constantly asking myself that question. Is what I'm doing in service to something bigger than myself?
Right. And that seemed more likely to be something you could achieve if you were in a role not on the stage directly with the audience. How were these ideas or values instilled in you, maybe growing up by your parents? Like, where did this come from, these ideas and this sort of desire to pursue them?
The art part, I'm not sure, to be honest. I'm not, like I said, my mom's an attorney and my dad was a businessman. However, they both gave back. I was raised in a very faithful home, and we went to a regular church on Saturdays. We were Seventh-day Adventist. I don't know if you can keep that or not. I don't know. Don't want to alienate anybody by talking about that. But
it's just your story.
They were youth pastors. And so they volunteered every Sabbath, or that's what we called it, every Sabbath, in the with the young people. That was their favorite. They were in their 20s, so they thought it was kind of fun.
Hmm.
They hung out they took them on ski trips. They went backpacking and camping. And they would take me along, right? Because I was their baby and I was like 3 or 4 years old. And then my sister came along and we'd all go. But I saw them mentoring young people on a regular basis. And that continued even when they stopped being married and when they stopped being involved with the church. My mother mentors still young attorneys that are up and coming and hired into her firm attorneys that she could mentor. My dad, when he owned his own business, would also mentor physical therapists who were looking at in home health. So I watched them do that. My mom is always adopting random people into our family and being like, "Look, I've got a new person that we're bringing in." So, um, I think that's where it comes from. Like they both were like community builders before that was a term, and they
Yeah.
both were nurturing youth development before without a formal title.
Right. So from the trust, you went to the PGE Foundation. And now, of course, you're the director of a nonprofit. While all this is happening professionally, you had twins.
Yes.
What does the Kimberly, who is now a mom of two twins who are now how old?
10 and a half.
10 and a half. What does that person think about work that the person who had not yet had those children maybe didn't know or didn't think?
It has to have the outcome. If it doesn't have the outcome, it's not worth it. I've spent a lot of years now here at Caldera, not a lot, but and it's been a challenging work environment, and it's taken a lot away from my family. And so part of my aspiration now is to see this through to the success point where I can say Caldera has landed, right? We are now an organization that's going to live 30 years and beyond. You know, there's some key indicators that this organization is going to thrive beyond my leadership. Another way of putting it is that the aspiration that I had in my youth, because I'm now middle-aged, has turned more into a striving. I'm striving to make something happen that doesn't cost too much in terms of what I lose on the other side.
It's a big lifestyle change. I mean, it changes things. But what would I not understand that you actually bring to work now that maybe you didn't? Like maybe you're a little bit more divided, but what do you bring now that the younger Kimberly didn't, maybe, that is actually helping?
That's a good. I do think that I bring balance. I do think I bring balance. I didn't do anything on Sunday, for example. It was really hard to not do anything on Sunday. And it partly because I wanted to model to the twins like what it looks like to do nothing, because they are constantly looking for something to do, right? They're like in a
Yeah.
entertain me, like, or if you won't entertain me, then I'm going to be on my screen, and we take that away, you know. We're like, don't. So what does it look like to do nothing? So I think I bring that now. This winter I took off every Friday. I just blocked it off, and I told everyone every Friday for the winter I'm gone, because the twins don't have school on Fridays.
Okay.
And so even though the snow was like on the mountain, we still took advantage, and we were there on some of the good days and we were there on some of the bad days. They started calling me ski mom, because I would invite a couple of friends to, in the third row and put the skis up on top. And so we skied every Friday, and I got to be in like the most beautiful part to me. I love the mountain. I love snow. I love a clear blue sky day with snow. And I love skiing with my boys. They're awesome. I love seeing them on the mountain from far away, and they'll be like, "Mom, look at me." And it's like the best thing that you can do as a family, I think, because you're active, you're outside, everybody's having a good time, and you're really tired at the end of the day.
Right.
And so we have quality time in the car both ways. My younger Kimberly would never have thought to do something like that. It would have been like, I'm just working. I've got stuff. I've got goals. I've got, we've got to meet this goal. We got to meet that goal. I'm just going to keep on working. And no, sometimes, no,
Yeah.
you've got to stop and just be in space with your peeps. Now, the flip side of that is I read something that Warren Buffett said about
Okay.
good CEOs allow for time and brain space away from the work.
Huh.
And the first day that I went skiing, I didn't even actually take the twins. It was like the best powder day, and I was just like, well, I'm gonna go on my own. They have school. I'm going. And there was like long lines, but it didn't matter. It was beautiful. And I was on the lift, and there was like that quiet that snow makes. And it was a blue sky day, fresh powder, and my brain just was like, and I thought, this is what Warren Buffett was talking about. Like, you have to step away from it. You can't like always be looking at it. Because I came up with like 3 or 4 solutions that had been really weighing on me while sitting on that ski lift.
Yeah. I mean, I'd buy that 100%. And I think it's funny because it speaks to creativity on a lot of different levels. We work with clients, of all kinds. And I think, yes, we bring a lot of experience in communication and in different applications of it to solve various problems. But on a different level, it's really just like there are organizations and the people inside them tend to be very, very, very stuck inside those organizations in their mindset, particularly if they've been there for a long time. And we just come in as a third party and probably ask questions and consider ideas or perspectives that they just haven't because they're too deep in what they're doing. And so, yes, our experience and our, quote, expertise pays off. But honestly, sometimes it's just like a fresh perspective. And I think everybody needs to do that with their own work in order to stay engaged, for one thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
To stay I love how you brought it back to creativity, because that's exactly, not to like make a sales pitch about Caldera, but that's exactly why the young people go away for those 8 to 10 days during the summer. That moment where you step off the bus and you are back at Caldera, and there's the crystal blue lake, and there's the dirt, and there's friends, and there's a camera and a paintbrush and a journal. Your mind does exactly what happened to me on the lift. It goes,
yeah.
And when you think about how much young people, especially middle school, like adolescence, is like such a time of like,
Yeah.
so much coming at people these days, these young people. In fact, one of our youth called it soul expansion. And I just love that. Caldera is soul expansion.
There you go. Make him an intern, or her.
Right?
Do you think it's fair to say that you have the career and probably just the brain of a systems thinker? I mean, you're really like finding gaps in your experience within the larger world that you want to, impact, and filling those gaps. I mean, that's what it feels like from the outside. Is that the way that you see it?
Yeah, yes. It's a nice proper term, systems thinker, dot connector. I was watching a really bad television show called The Lincoln Lawyer, and I was watching him sit at the board, right? There's always a whiteboard in some mystery where there's like string going from photos or whatever, and he's just staring at it. And I was like, that is exactly what I do every single day. And like, that the only way that I can feel effective in my work is when I can sit back and stare at the problem, like this board or something, and just stare at it.
It's a good Post-it note board you've got behind you.
Because at some point there's a pattern that's going to appear, and that pattern is the answer. There's something that if I can just sit and see it. And so, yes, if that's called systems thinking, then yes, that's me.
I mean, were you conscious of saying, like, from the trust, I want to go work for a private foundation? And then after that, were you conscious of, like, you know what, I want to just get in it. I want to go to a nonprofit.
From leaving when I left PGE, yes. When I left PGE, I was very conscious that I had gotten to the point where I was developing programs within PGE for PGE to implement that PGE had no business implementing because it was a corporation. It wasn't a nonprofit.
Yeah.
We were using nonprofit partners and we were providing backbone systems thinking so that the nonprofits could just develop and get paid for it. But ultimately, it was a programmatic idea. And I thought, oh, I think I'm missing programs. I didn't look for Caldera though. I didn't necessarily even look to be an ED of a nonprofit. I just looked to see how could I do something different. And Caldera called me 3 times, the recruiter. Just the first time I asked a bunch of cool questions apparently, and so she called me back. And then I said, I'm really not interested, but thank you. And then she called me back and she was like, I just have another question. And then I was at the same time interviewing somewhere else. And so I told her, this is not the right time for my family. And I'll never forget this. And I use this story every once in a while. I got the call from the other place. I had been a finalist. They were checking references and everything, so I thought it was a done deal. And they said they'd gone with the internal candidate. And I was just like, and also I was ready. By that time, I had like gotten myself ready to take a leadership role. And at PGE, I didn't have any staff. Wasn't a manager, and I was really wanting to do that. So yes, my systems thinking was I'm ready to be a leader and actually have a lead with authority rather than just leading with influence. How do I do that? And Caldera kind of crossed paths with that.
Where you sit today, what impact do you want to have? And I guess, how do you think that you are now in a position to have the kind of impact you want to make after, however long the career has gone to this point? Like you've done all the work to get here, and you mentioned making sure that Caldera is in a good, stable place. But what do you think is in the future for you?
I always thought that I would end my career as a cabinet member in the president's office, and the cabinet position doesn't exist, and it was Secretary of Culture.
Okay.
That there was actually like a Secretary of Culture that managed and coordinated with the NEA and the NIH and the National Endowment for Humanities, all of those agencies and entities, as well as sort of worked cross-culturally across the globe with other countries around arts and heritage and humanities. I always thought that's what I would, be in my 60s and I would be appointed to that position. I don't want to do that anymore. Now I think that I can be of most use to the community is to take all that I've learned in this journey of work from red sale advertising to this moment, and in about 8 years. That's my trajectory. I would like to stay at Caldera for another 8 years. Maybe I'll consult. Maybe I'll start a think tank for how nonprofits can advocate better for arts and culture. Maybe I will become a backbone for-profit organization that helps these smaller arts nonprofits. I don't want to be a nonprofit because I don't want to raise money, but I want to help them do all of the administrative back thing that can sometimes get in the way of a nonprofit getting the work done and making the impact. Right. So that's an idea that's been floating around, but mostly I see myself at 70 living in maybe Jackson Hole and skiing during the winter and working with horses and next to my husband who loves horses when it's not winter. And that's what we would do. We'll just retire that way and it'll be great.
Excellent. So before I lose, first of all, that's amazing. I truly wish you that future. What's the 8 years?
The 8 years. So thanks to a wonderful executive director who I've been watching grow and develop over the years, I came across this article by the Harvard Business Review about how organizations, not just nonprofits, but all organizations, entities, companies, once they've gotten to 30 years, how they can go from 30 to 100 by a couple of sets of criteria. And one of the number one criteria was that their leadership, not just the CEO, but the C level, the C suite, have been at the organization 10 years or more. So organizations that have a constant flip of CEOs or CFOs or other leadership are not as likely to be in a long lasting brand, if you will, as organizations that keep their leadership on. That's one element. There's some other elements too, but that was the one. And I thought, okay. And so because Caldera is an organization that was founded by a family, the family is still deeply involved. And so as part of the founder transition, when Dan Weich passed away, I sat down with the family and I said, let's make this organization live beyond the 30 years that we're about to see. Like, we're going to be 30 years old in October. How do we go beyond that? And I said, so I'm committed. I'm committed to being here for a full 10 years, if not longer, to make sure that this organization, the legacy that Dan began, goes on. And so it was an MOU, if you will, a verbal. It was a gentleman's agreement or whatever you want to call it when you're not gentlemen. I'm committed to that. So that was 2 years ago that I told him that, and so at that point I said I'll be there for 10 years, and that puts us at 2034, so that's 8 years from now. That's when the boys or the twins graduate from high school, so it's perfect. Okay. They graduate, send them off to college, have a big retirement party, and maybe move to Jackson Hole at that point, depending on how tired I am, or consult for a few more years and then move to Jackson Hole.
Well, that's great. So, okay, last question.
Yes.
If somebody's young and inspired by what you're talking about and what you've done, but they're at the beginning of their career and they don't necessarily see all the dots connecting, what would you tell that person?
Always say yes. Don't listen to the naysayers. Listen to your own voice, and opportunities will come that you're supposed to have. And don't think about it too long. Just say yes.
Well, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for asking. It was a pleasure.
Work-Shaped Life is produced by the team at Sheepscot Creative. It's hosted by me, Dave Weich, edited by Bailey Cain and Michael Nipper, with production support from Benna Gottfried, Rosie Struve, Amelia Lukas, and Kate Sokoloff. Next time on Work-Shaped Life, what's the longest you've ever gone without working hard?
I don't think ever since I went to college.
You've never what's the longest vacation you've had?
2.5 weeks.
In 30 years?
Yes. But we're in America, that's common.
Is it? I don't know. Visit workshapedlife.com to find every episode and say hello. Or even better, tell us a story about your own work-shaped life. Maybe we'll feature it on the podcast. Subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to hear new episodes as they drop. We'll see you in 2 weeks with the next conversation. Thanks for listening.